And the first question, oh, sorry, I just realized my hands-free was not in the laptop. Instead, I had my hands-free in the phone, right? Sorry. Was my voice clear? But now you should be able to hear me clearly, right? Okay, perfect. Now here's the first question, students. Which statement is most valid reason for government intervention in the free market? Okay, let's read all the options, right? Consumers are well informed, making it difficult for producers to make profit. Health and education are not available in sufficient quantities. Producers are motivated only by profit. There are many competitive firms and not enough sole suppliers, right? Right, Zohan, walaikum assalam, how are you? So Zohan, what we are doing, so I was just telling you before you joined the class that we have completed unit 1 of AS Economics, and in today's class we'll practice some MCQ questions, and in tomorrow's class we'll do some essay questions, right? So it is a good way to, apply the knowledge that you have learned, and in this way you will be able to practice past papers as we move through our syllabus, right? Rather than waiting towards the end and so on. So that's what we are about to do today. So here's the first question. No problem. Which statement is the most valid reason for the government intervention in the market economy? So I would want you to read the question, read the options, and then tell me what the answer is. And then we'll see how many of you got it correct, incorrect, and then we'll discuss at the end. So which statement is most valid reason? Right. Khizr is saying B, Zohan is saying C. Okay, that's interesting. What about other students? Yeah. What about other students? So do you remember we talked about this? Students, we talked about this, that why the government intervenes in the free market, right? Zan, what do you think? Zoya, right? So producers are motivated only by profit might be a concern at some times, Zohan. That's also a close option. But a major reason of government intervening in the free market economy is to deal with something more pressing, to deal with something more important. Do you understand? So the reason why,
but ये point show कर रहे हैं कि like वो quantity कम है, पर कम तो नहीं हो सकती. हम ये कह सकते हैं like people afford नहीं कर सकते, महंगा हो सकता है, पर कम तो नहीं हो सकती क्योंकि like उन्होंने profit कमाना है. वो तो चाहेंगे कि जितने मर्जी hospitals बनाए या जितने मर्जी schools बनाए. क्या कहते हैं?
Okay, I get it. Which statement is the most valid reason for government intervention in the free market economy? Right, health insurance not available in sufficient quantity. I get it. So basically what you're saying is that you're taking the statement in very little sense, right? So it's not available it's available in sufficient quantity, but people can't afford. So and that's also correct. But sometimes let's look at the answer. I also get what you're trying to say here, and it kind of makes sense. But I think the answer will be B. Let's see, and then we'll continue with our discussion, right? So that's the problem. B. Okay, now think about this one. You're right that it's not the quantity that is limited. It's available for everyone who can pay for it. But what they meant by the statement, are you getting me? Insufficient quantities or not available in sufficient quantities, what they meant was that it's not available for everyone. Zohan, it's not available for everyone. That's basically what it's trying to imply. Right? Zen, Zoya, did you guys understand this? Right? Right. Got it? Okay. So it happens. So that's the trick part. Students. So compared to IGCSE, right? So in AS level, you'll see that there will be a little increase in the difficulty level. Not because, you don't know the concept, but mainly because of the wording that they use. Okay. Now let's move to the next question. The second question says, what would not be considered a barter transaction? What would not be considered a barter transaction? A car repairer undertaking the annual service on a plumber's van in return for the plumber fitting a new sink in the car repairer's kitchen, right? What is not a barter transaction? A consumer negotiating with the shopkeeper and buying a pair of trousers for $10 rather than asking price of $30, right? A graduate student exchanging a set of textbook for a radio with a student about to start the course. A train company allowing a phone company to advertise on its train in return for the right to advertise on the phone company's website. What is not a barter system, right? So that was pretty simple and obvious. It's B, because in the barter system, what happens, students? You exchange goods and services for the goods and services, right? So it's not a barter system, right? Here you are paying the price. In the modern economy, we pay the price. It's the money that we use to make transactions and not the barter system, right? Easy? Is everyone clear? Any confusion? Okay, a factory introduces an automated production line. Okay, a factory introduces, excellent, an automated production line to take advantage of division of labor. Now, before we move forward in the question, let me tell you, for those who might be hearing this word for the first time, division of labor. So division of labor is basically specialization. Students, so division of labor, I'll be writing the keywords over here, key terms over here, so that you can always revert back. Okay, by the way, I'll do that in today's class. Don't worry. I'll share the entire folder with you, because then after the class, I always forget, right? Let me write at the end. Terms. Okay, now what is division of labor? So division of labor, students, is basically specialization of labor, right? So what happens that nowadays, if you notice, every person has a specialized work that they do. They have a career, a profession that they choose. So profession is also a way of specialization. If I'm a teacher, that's what I'm expected to do for most part of my professional life. It's not that people don't switch, they do switch to other things, but for the most part, they focus on a certain thing, right? Similarly, a doctor stays as a doctor, right? So doctor can't a few years down the lane switch to something other, like become a lawyer, or sometimes people do that. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but most people in modern economy specialize in the profession that they have chosen for themselves, right? So that is basically what division of labor is. Now let me explain you how this works. So division of labor is when a big project or yeah, big project is divided into smaller parts or activities, and every person is made to specialize in one activity, right? So if you have seen, let me give you a good example for this. If you have seen some documentaries, how flow production works. Do you guys take business studies? Flow production. So just go and YouTube how Lay's chips are produced, or how Pepsi is being produced, or how anything for that matter is produced, right? So there is a big project. Let's say you have to produce Lay's, but there are multiple steps involved in that. So first of all, you have to get the potatoes, peel them, wash them, cut them, add salt, fry them, and then pack them in the packaging that we get, right? So the big project, which was producing chips, is broken down into smaller activities, and every person is just looking after one particular task. So one person would not be doing the entire production of that product, right? So that person would only be looking after. So if a laborer is standing at the frying part, then all he or she has to make sure is that that part is completed in a satisfactory manner, right? So you are not responsible for the other parts. Are you getting me? So that is what division of labor is, right? It's also known as specialization. What is most likely to increase? So when you're doing division of labor and automation is needed for division of labor, right? Are you getting me? So what is most likely to increase? Now read the option. Average cost of production. What is the average cost of production? Can any one of you tell me what is average cost of production? Job satisfaction of workers, range of skills of each worker, worker productivity. Now, a lot of these terms might be new to you, right? But if any one of you is feeling confused, ask me. I'll define the terms anyways. But yeah, so what do you think is the answer? What is most likely to increase? B, Zuan is saying job satisfaction of workers. Total cost divided by total quantity produced. I think D, right. Okay, what about others? Make a guess. If you don't know, D, because it is saying B. We're saying, Zoya, are you Khadija? And your name is entered as Zoya? Because that is always very confusing for me. A, average cost of production. Okay, average cost of production. Okay, okay. Zen, do you want to make a guess? Okay, so the correct answer is, students, the correct answer is, where did it go? Is D. The correct answer is D. Right. No. Average cost of production. How would average cost of production increase? Average cost of production would decrease. What question number was this? That was D. Have a look at this, students. Now let's come back and let's look at what it actually means. Okay, average cost of production. So average cost of production is basically, Zohan gave the exact definition, but I will try to explain it in much simpler words. Average cost of production, think about this. So if you produce, let's say if let's say there is a street food vendor, right? And that person made 10 burgers in a day. How many burgers did he make? 10 burgers, right? So total cost that he faced in terms of, all the food items that he had to buy, the sauce, the ketchup, the patty, the chicken patty, or whatever was added in that, right? So the total cost that that person had to pay was, let's say, $250, right? So those 5 or 10 burgers, right, that person produced costed him, let's say the total quantity was 5, costed him $250, right? Now, if you want to calculate that how much a typical burger costed you, so all you have to do is to divide the $250 with 5. That gives you how much? $50. This means each burger costed you how much? $50. Is it making sense? Right? So when you divide, exactly, when you divide the work, when there's division of labor, right? The cost of producing a typical unit of good. Is it making sense? Right? The cost of producing the typical unit of good is basically your average cost of production. Typical unit of a good, right? Or a product, or whatever you want to call it, right? Now that is your average cost of production. Now, Zohan and everyone else, when you divide labor, the very reason you want to do division of labor so that your average cost decreases. Because think about this, if one person is doing multiple tasks, then he or she will leave one task, move to the other one, then start doing that other thing, and it will be time consuming and wastage of time, right? And that person will also not develop expertise. Are you getting me? So just think about it. If I have to constantly switch between teaching economics and teaching any other subject, right? So it will not be that efficient, right? So average cost of production always decreases, right? Cost of production always decreases when there's division of labor. Did you get me? Always decreases when division of labor. Okay. Now that was the first term in the question that you had to understand. Okay. Now the second term that was being used, job satisfaction. What is job satisfaction? So, I mean, it's not something complicated. This is a normal everyday language word. Satisfaction means how much content, how much satisfied you are with the job, right? So when you're just doing one thing again and again and again, will you be very happy with it? If you're doing one thing again and again and again, will you be very happy with it? What do you think? Yes, no, what? Right. And the answer to that is, right? No, you will get bored. Exactly. So job satisfaction cannot increase. Range of skills. Again, will the range of skills increase? Obviously not. You're just focusing on one thing. So you will become really expert in that thing, but you will not learn a lot of diverse skills. And the last one is productivity. Now, what is productivity? Now, productivity might be a new word for you, especially if you're taking economics for the first time. But let me tell you, it simply means efficiency. Like in normal language, we say efficiency, right? So what is more efficient method of doing something? I mean, efficiency, right? So it means efficiency, which is basically output produced with certain amount of inputs, right? So how much is the output that you're producing with a certain amount of input? That is your efficiency, right? So if two students are studying for 5 hours and one student gets A and the other student gets B, so which of the two is more efficient? Two students studied for the same number of hours, one got an A, the other one got a B, right? So obviously the one with an A, because with the same input, what was the input? The time, right? And you produce. So same is the idea over here. If in a certain time, one person makes 10 footballs, the other person makes 8 footballs, the one who's making more is higher. And always remember, when there's division of labor, there's more productivity. Easy? Any confusion so far? Is there any question that you want to ask? more is not the right word, higher productivity. Right? So that's what you need to remember, right? So perfect. So the answer to this was 3. So 3 is D. Very good. Perfect. Let's move on. Which statement is normative? Did we talk about normative and positive statement? I don't think so. Right. So let me tell you right now. So what is normative? It's a very simple one-line concept. Normative statement and positive statement. Now you have to kind of pay attention to that, right? Let's think about this. In economics, the entire economics is basically divided in 2 categories, right? So one is some part of economics is objective. Have you guys ever heard the word objective? Objective is something which is basically there is something which is a fact. Anything that is a fact, we also use the word objective for that. So anything that is which is a fact in economics, we will say that it is positive statement. Now let me give you an example. If I say that Pakistan's inflation rate was 10% last year. Now what I mean, 10% might be correct, 10% might be incorrect, but I can verify whether it was 10% or not. Why? Because there is globally accepted way of calculating inflation. How many of you got this? Another thing, if I say that Pakistan has 5 million people in Pakistan are unemployed. Now, whether 5 million, the number itself is correct or not, it is still a positive statement because we can verify it. We know who is unemployed. How do we define the term unemployed? And we can check if 5 million people are unemployed in Pakistan or not. So any statement is a fact or something that can be verified with globally accepted standards of positive statement. How many of you got me over here, right? So if I say that US is the largest economy in the world, we already know this. This is a fact, right? So that is again a positive statement, right? Are you getting me? How many of you got me over here, right? Now, okay, now what is, right? Normative statement is an opinion. Normative statement is an opinion. If the price will reduce, the demand will, yeah, exactly. So the inverse relationship between price and demand, exactly. That's a positive statement. Okay. Now, normative statement, students, is an opinion. If I say that inflation is more of a problem in Pakistan compared to unemployment, inflation is more of a problem in Pakistan compared to unemployment. Now, people can disagree with me, no matter who I am, right? No matter how big of an economist I am, people can disagree because it's an opinion. Similarly, if I say that Pakistan should focus more on exports rather than foreign investment or anything else, right? So again, that is an opinion. People can disagree. It's not something that can be verified because opinions cannot be challenged, right? Opinion is my own way of thinking, right? It's not something that is a fact. So if I say the temperature out today in Islamabad is 13 degrees Celsius, right? So that's either that would be correct or that would be incorrect, but still I can verify. I can just go on the Google and check, right? So that is positive. Yes or no? So normative statement, on the other hand, is an opinion which is subjective and therefore cannot be verified. Confusion? Confusion? Anything not clear? Anything you want to ask me? Right? Okay. Is everyone following me? Right? Now you have to first, let's read the question and then I'll tell you the hint. I'll tell you how do you identify the normative statement. I'll tell you. Okay. Now the first statement says a minimum wage is the correct government policy to increase the incomes of the lowest paid workers. So minimum wage, you know what minimum wage is? Minimum wage is, we in fact talked about it in the other class as well, that it is the minimum wage that you have to pay to your workers, right? That's legally binding. Legally binding meaning that you have to follow that. If you don't follow that, there can be legal action against you, right? A minimum wage is the lowest amount that employees can legally pay their workers. As I said, in Pakistan, a minimum wage of 15,000 Pakistani rupees per month was set on 1st June 2016. Setting the minimum wage rate above the equilibrium rate will result in excess supply of workers. Now, this is something that we haven't studied yet. The D option, setting the minimum wage rate above the equilibrium will result in an excessive supply of workers. But out of this, which of these four statements do you think is an opinion? Which of these four statements do you think is an opinion? Okay, Zohan is saying D. Which of these do you think is an opinion, and which means that it cannot be verified? It cannot be verified. What about other students? Yeah. Is it A, B, C, D, what? Okay, D. Zohan is saying A. What about others? Zain? Khizr? What do you think? A. Okay. Right. Right. Okay. So the correct answer is, now you have to pay attention. The correct answer is A. Why so? Let me tell you. A minimum wage is the correct government policy to increase the income of the lowest paid workers. Now, let me ask you a simple question. If the government has to support, if government wants to support, financially support low paying workers, is minimum wage the only policy, right? Obviously not. There will be a couple of other things. You can give them income support programs. You can give them additional income, blah, blah, blah. There are things like that, right? Right. Yeah. Yeah. So even without knowing, yeah, even without knowing what D meant, but you would have gotten the idea that you can at least verify it. Setting, whether we haven't studied it. This is part of unit 2 where we'll talk about the demand supply, right? So I don't want to confuse you at the moment, but reading the language of the statement, you could have told that setting the minimum wage rate above the equilibrium will result in excess supply of workers. Now, this is something that you can verify, right? This is something that you can verify and you can check whether, this holds true or not. Just like these two statements, we don't know. Do you guys know how much was the minimum wage that Pakistan set in 2016? Are you guys 100% sure this is correct? This might be incorrect amount. But again, as I said, whether it's correct or it's incorrect, as long as it can be verified, you can Google it right now and you can check, right? So that is positive statement. Exactly, right? Are you getting me? So the very use of the word correct told you that the very use of the word correct told you, 4 is A, right? That it is an opinion. So whenever the words should, words like should indicate that it is an opinion, right? Is it making sense? Sure, right? We're good. Can you move on? Confusion? Okay, next question. Now, this is the demand supply that we haven't studied. Okay, so let's skip this question. Let's move to the next paper. Okay, next paper is this. Okay, what is correct about scarcity? What is correct about scarcity? Okay, now for those of you who don't know, think about this. Let me give you a little bit of an overview, right? Because I know some students haven't studied economics before and they might be feeling quite lost, right? So think about this, scarcity. So scarcity is linked to the idea of what is economics, right? So let's talk about this. Now, since you have completed some classes with me, by now you would already have an idea of what we study about in economics, right? So economics basically deals with a couple of different things. Now listen to me very carefully. Economics deals with how, humans humans interact with each other in economic sense, in the sense that how to make transactions, how the prices of the goods are determined, right? So who decides that a cell phone, any type of cell phone, will sell for this much amount? Similarly, who decides that Pakistan should export this thing and import this thing? And similarly about other countries, the inflation that I was mentioning right now, right? What is inflation? Mengai, right? How fast prices are rising in a country, right? Exchange rates that you hear about all the time in the news. If you have to travel between countries, you would know that exchange rates are very important, right? So you take your currency from Pakistan to another country, but that currency would not be acceptable. So you have to go to a bank, you have to get it exchanged from, like you have to exchange your currency into the foreign currency where you are, in the country where you are, right? So this is basically what economics is about. But this becomes very difficult to define in one simple statement, right? So if we have to define economics, so, and obviously the most important thing that I completely forgot, economics is also about understanding how humans use resources to produce the products that we use, right? So all the products that you can see around yourself, starting off with the phone that you're using to take my class, or the laptop that you're using to take my class, the writing pad that you use, the pen, the bags, I mean, your clothes, your food, the furniture in your home, everything is basically a product that has been produced by someone. So economics is the study of resources. So the simplest definition that economists have come up with for the word of economics is that economics is the study of resources and how can be used to produce goods and services. Is it making sense, students? Right? So we talk about that, how we use resources to produce goods and services. Now, another thing that is linked to economics, right? Something very fundamental to economics is the idea known as basic economic problem. Now, what is basic economic problem? So this basic economic problem is the idea that all countries and individuals in the world have limited resources and unlimited wants. Now, what are resources? So resources are basically the inputs. Resources are the inputs that you need to produce something, right? So, I mean, we will talk about this, right? So resources are the things that you need to produce something. So think about this. What goes into making your laptop? The microprocessors that are used, right? Factors of production. We also call them factors of production. I'll explain you, right? So what goes into making the laptop that you're using, right? The microprocessors, the plastic that is used, the special material that is used for the screen, right? And so on and so forth, right? I'm not an engineer, so I can't tell you any more than this, right? So coming back to the point, right? Coming back to the point, the resources that you need to produce something are always limited. More or less is a different story, right? So even if someone is very rich, think of Bill Gates, think of Elon Musk, think of any other richest person in the world. I mean, still they have limited wealth. There's limited, there's limit to how much they can afford or how much they can produce, right? Are you getting me? Very nice, very nice, right? So these are this idea that every country and every individual, right? No matter how much wealthy I am or how much less wealthy I am, I have limited income. I have to manage my expenses, the things that I need in life, clothes, car, shoes, I don't know, so many other things, right? That I have to constrain within the income that I have. So if I earn something more from someone else, still there's a limit to how much I can afford. And similarly, if someone earns more than me, then that person also has a limit to how much they can afford. So this is known as basic economic problem. And it is also known as scarcity. Scarcity means what? Right? Scarcity means limited, something that is in limited supply, right? It is also known as scarcity. So basic economic problem would also be defined in economics as scarcity. Okay, now since this question was about scarcity, I have explained you limited resource and unlimited wants. So let's read the question now and let's see if you understand it. Okay, which statement, what is correct about scarcity? Scarcity affects low income earners only. Scarcity forces individuals to make choice. Scarcity is removed by periods of falling prices, right? Scarcity is abolished by advances in technology. Students, what do you think is the answer? So if there is basic economic problem, which means you have limited resources and unlimited wants, So then which of these statements do you think would be true? Right, right? Easy, right? Now think about this. The word choices, I might not have explained you, right? So choices means when you have limited resources, I have to make choice. Every day I'm making choice. Same is true for you. Same is true for everyone in this world, right? We have to decide what to spend our money on, what to not spend our money on, right? Because this money could have been spent someplace else, right? So you have to make choices when you have limited income, limited options, with limited pocket money, with limited income, with limited salary. I have to make choices because if I choose one thing, I have to give up on another thing, right? Easy. Which labels might be used on the production possibility curve diagram? So on the production possibility curve that we saw, which shows you what is the maximum output that a country can produce, how do we label that? How do we label the axes of that? Right? What do we have on the y-axis? What do we have on the x-axis? Yeah. So those who haven't completed this topic with me might be a little confused. So production possibility curve, since it's a little complicated topic, so I would not want to, quickly give you an overview. In fact, we'll discuss in the extra class that we will have, right? So what labels might be used on production possibility curve? So let me quickly show you. Production possibility curve is a graph that shows the maximum output that a country can produce with available amount of resources, right? So in that case, you have a normal graph like this, like any graph that you see, right? So you show on that graph the output, the maximum output that a country can produce. So the shape of a PPC, that's very bad drawing, right? So the shape of a PPC is a downward sloping curve. The shape of the PPC is a downward sloping curve like this, right? Are you getting me? It's a downward sloping curve like this. So what do we have on the X and the Y axis? So on the X and Y axis, we have quantity of the output that you can produce. So any two goods that you can think of in this world, right? So how much cell phones would a country produce, right? Because on a graph, we can only show two products. This is not what happens in real life because in real life, countries produce hundreds of products. But since we cannot show more than two products on a graph, so we will assume, we will take any two graphs, any two products. So how many quantity of cell phone can a country produce, and how much quantity of cars can a country produce? That will be shown on your production possibility curve. So that is what PPC is. So it doesn't show capital input, it doesn't show labor input, it doesn't show cost of production, it doesn't show quantity produced. It shows output of rice. Now, rice is a product. It can be correct, but the other column is not correct. Labor input, that's incorrect, right? And then the output of rice and the output of sugar. Easy, clear, confusion, right? So the answer should be D. Okay, now this is something that you might know. Okay, a good's defining quality is that its consumption by one person prevents its consumption by someone else. We did discuss this in the class when we were talking about economic systems, right? You guys remember? We talked about this. So what is this type of good? How is this good classified? First of all, tell me, what is this called? Right. Consumption of the good by one person prevents its consumption by the other person, right? How is this good defined? What's the quality? It's rivalry. Exactly. Excellent, right? So rivalry is non-rivalry. I said non-rivalry are public goods because even if multiple people are using that product, it doesn't decrease its quantity. Like multiple people access roads every day, but I mean, everyone gets the benefit out of that. Whereas for private goods, if I'm using my laptop, no one else can use my laptop. Yes, no, right? Similarly, if I'm using my phone, no one else can use that. So it's a private good. And I did say that private goods are rival, right? Private goods are rival. So what would be the nature of the good? And be careful. What's the question asking you, right? The question is asking you, how is this good defined? So if any good has this characteristic of rivalry, how do you define that good? And you have to say it's a private good, right? Very good. So 3 is D. 3 is D. Okay, now the next question, what is normative economic statement? Now I leave it for you to answer. Okay, liquid. So D. How do you know it's D?
सर आई मीन लाइक टैक्सेस के अलावा भी हम कुछ और कर सकते हैं ना, लाइक हम
Exactly.
बैन लगा
Exactly.
सकते हैं, कुछ और भी कर सकते हैं, लाजमी बात नहीं है टैक्सेस लगाएं.
Correct. Correct. Very good. Right. So students, think about this. So Zohan is very right into saying that it says taxes are the best way to discourage smoking. We know there are other ways to discourage smoking, like you prohibit the sale below a certain age, or you aware people how much harmful it is, right? And the very use of the word best, who will determine what's best, right? It's always subjective. Yes or no? When you argue with your friends that who's the best player or who's the best, singer, I mean, there's no conclusion to that discussion because everyone has their own opinion, right? Their own way of looking at things, right? So best, the very use of the word best tells you that it's subjective. Easy? Confusion? Okay. Now, students, what we'll do for SD, right? So what we'll do, we'll stop here and tomorrow we'll do essay questions related to the first unit, right? There you'll get a better idea of how to solve the answer and also tell you how the level marking works, right? Does it make sense? So we'll continue from here, right? Today I can't take it, stretch it a little forward. I have another commitment, right? But I'll see you tomorrow, right? At the same time, 9 to 9:45, right? Take care, have a good night and see you tomorrow. Okay. Allah Hafiz.